So if you're new to this, Matt has a collection of socks. So I got to see him live and in person this weekend. So I had to see the socks. The one day was more interesting than the other.
The first day the socks I brought were boring. They were just warm and comfortable, but they were,
Yes,
I shouldn't say
striped.
totally boring. They were just
No.
striped, right? Like they weren't just like plain one color. And then the next day, those are some of my favorite ones. And I've shown them on here before. They're my black sheep socks, where it has one black sheep amongst a bunch of white ones. And then on the very bottom, it says there's one in every family. So those are some of my favorite ones. So to be honest, I have been saving some socks that I'm like, I am not going to wear these socks until I do a webinar. So I've been like itching to like bust these out. So these ones are really, I thought these ones are really fun. These one, okay. Oh man. So it has like, wait.
Oh, fun.
It really is like a little monster guy, right? So there's
and you could do a whole sock puppet thing from
I
your
totally
socks.
could. And then like if you look, the monster guys on the heel as well.
Oh my gosh, I love them. Those are so fun.
These are super fun. I love these.
Yeah.
And they're actually my favorite ones. The company's called Sock Guy, and no, I'm not sponsored by them. Although if they see this,
you should be. Yeah.
If they see this video, they should send me socks. But but they're actually like athletic socks. They're cycling and running socks and stuff. And so I tell my wife like, hey, we just got to find the ones that have fun patterns on the feet. So anyway.
So what do you got for us today?
Oh, okay. So I'm going to go back to something that I have talked about quite a bit. I had somebody send me an email. And so I'm gonna jump around a touch, but I will tell everybody who's watching, if you've got questions, start typing them out and throwing them in there. Because to be honest, the faster you type out questions and throw them into the Q&A, the faster I stop talking and we get onto the stuff that you actually want to hear about. I don't know why I think I'm funny, but
you are.
Oh, okay. And I will say, I guess I should also say I have an announcement, and I told you about it. So I am actually starting my own private practice. I've been working at Family Strategies for 11 years and I love it here. And there's so many wonderful therapists here. And I'm actually starting my own private practice, which is about 10 miles away, a lot closer to my house. And so I think Tammy updated the information on the website. So if anybody ever wants to email me, use that email. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have on that, but I'm excited.
I'm excited for you too. I think I know how important your family is, and being closer, having that even more better, able to balance would be great. So
it's crazy. Like thinking about it, I'm like, I'm going to save. I mean, just saving a half hour every day driving, like how much better that is, that I can put into being home. I mean, I'll be close enough. If I want to run home for lunch real quick, I could. I mean, that's awesome. So really, really fun. I'm super excited. But and it's called Aspen Trail Counseling Center, or aspentrailcounseling.com. I totally wanted to go with like an outdoor theme because I love outdoors and the tranquility and whatnot. So but
you're in Arizona, it should be Mesquite Counseling.
Right, except that some of my favorite trails to mountain bike and hike on are the aspen trails up in like the Flagstaff area. And so aspen trees are amazing. Their roots are all interlocked. They're like the largest living organism on earth. And then, so I had to, anyway, that's what I went for.
I love that. I think that messaging, I'm sure, will be on your website. So
it absolutely will be.
Yeah.
So, but today I wanted to talk about a couple of things. And one of the things that people hear me say that kind of surprises them is when I will tell them that the healthiest relationships have the most boundaries. And I don't know how long ago I've talked about it, but it surprises people because I hate the word boundaries. You've probably heard me say this before. I hate the word because it implies a barrier. But a boundary is just a need, an unmet need. And And it's me trying to let somebody be aware of what that need is. And I've told stories on here about like my wife not wanting me to use the loofah. I didn't do that last time, did I? You don't remember?
It was fairly
It
recent,
was
so I
fairly
can't, yeah, I'd have to say it might be December, but I'm not 100%.
Yeah. So, but what I'm throwing out is that it surprises everybody, and I want betrayed partners. If you're a betrayed partner, or if you're struggling with compulsivity or addiction, every single person has a right to boundaries. So, and it's sometimes difficult if you've caused a lot of pain in the relationship. You might think, I'm not allowed to have boundaries. I'm not allowed to have needs. I'm not allowed to make requests because I'm the problem and I've caused all these issues. But the truth is, you have just as many needs as your partner does. And we need to learn to communicate our needs to each other. A lot of fights that we have in relationships are because we are terrible at communicating needs. And so we go to our partner and we say something like, hey, you're being condescending. And so then we start having an argument about what's condescending and what's not, rather than, hey, I'm feeling a lot of condescension. Oh, gosh.
Condensate. And now I can't say
See, you did it. Condensation. Oh, wait.
it.
I'm feeling a lot of condescension. I think I'm saying that right.
Yes, that was right.
And that was so funny, Tammy. I love that. And so we need to tell our spouse, I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling scared. And a lot of times if we tell our spouse, like, you're scaring me, then we get an argument about what being scared is. And so the more we express our boundaries, we express our needs, the better opportunity there is for a healthy relationship. Keep in mind, an unhealthy person, it doesn't matter how well you say things. If they're going to be unhealthy, they're going to be unhealthy. Like, you can't say things good enough to prevent somebody else from treating you poorly, if that makes any sense. So don't get caught in that trap of, if I say it just right, then maybe I'll be treated the way I need to be treated. But we have to learn how to express our needs really well. And I will tell you guys this. I asked my oldest son, who's a teenager, he asked me, I should say, he said, Dad, give me another psychology book to read. And I told him to read Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. I love that book. And so he read it and he's like, wow, Dad, I had no idea that when I'm communicating, I'm actually communicating needs all the time. And so we've had some conversations on that. And then he's like, give me another one. And I said, okay, read Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. And I said to my kid, I almost said his name out loud. I said to my kid, I haven't read that one yet. I need you to report back to me about the book and when I should or shouldn't recommend it to people. So he reads it and he says, Dad, people, except maybe you, people need to read Atlas of the Heart first, because it's all about understanding our emotions. And he goes, it's not like her normal book. She's super scattered. But in Atlas of the Heart, she really narrows in and sets it up really well and teaches about where our emotions come from and what they're all about. And he says, then have them read Nonviolent Communication, because when you read Nonviolent Communication, you're going to be learning better how to express those emotions. Okay, so now my son says, you guys, that's the order you guys need to read them. Now, what I wanted to jump into is, because we get this all the time, passive aggression, gaslighting. And just so we're clear, when I talk about gaslighting, I want you, as a betrayed partner or as somebody struggling with addiction, to understand you can feel gaslit, and you are completely valid and justified in feeling gaslit, right? Whether the other person is intentionally doing it or not, it doesn't matter. If you feel it, it's real to you, right? but you have to be able to own, I'm feeling gaslit. This doesn't feel good. I need something to change. Can we talk about this? Right. And the same, and passive aggressive is the same thing. You can feel like your partner's being passive aggressive, and whether they're meaning to or not, it's how it feels, and you need to be able to communicate that. Now, if somebody's able to own, I am intentionally trying to gaslight you. I mean, what they're basically saying was, I was manipulating you on purpose, trying to make you feel crazy, because I was feeling threatened. You were about to find this out, and I didn't want you to find out. And so I totally made you feel crazy so that you didn't discover what was going on for me. And by the way, the more you can own those unhealthy behaviors in the past and in the present, the more trust, I'll start there, the more honesty and trust you build in the relationship. So if you have in the past been a gaslighter, you've been passive aggressive, and you can own it, you're going to do a lot of healing for your partner to help reinforce to them that you know you have done this, and that you're working on it. I always tell people, don't ever say you'll never do something again. Don't ever, I'm laughing because Tammy's like emphatically nodding. Don't ever say, I'll never gaslight you again. I'll never act out in my addiction. I'll never lie to you again. Because you're delusional, right? My hope is you won't, but let's not make a promise that is so easily, in a moment of limbic state or whatever, broken. You are far better off saying, I'm working really hard not to. Here's what I'm doing to try not to. If it happens again, I'm going to try to own it and apologize as quickly as possible, right? That's way better. And so when we start getting into expressing our needs, taking ownership for the mistakes we make, we want to be as clear as possible on our behaviors. The other thing we can own is why we want to be as clear as possible on our needs and what is going on for us. What is my need that I'm choosing to gaslight, that I'm choosing to be passive aggressive? What is the need? So if you think about it, if you're somebody who's being gaslit, or you're having somebody be passive aggressive with you, you want to do your best to listen deeper and it's so hard, but try not to take it personal, because when they're doing it, you're able to go, oh, you know what? This is the little boy or girl in this person, and they're gaslighting me. They're being passive aggressive. They're being mean. They're being rude because they're trying to figure out how to survive. They're scared. I'm not excusing the behavior at all. They need to learn to do better, but I'm not going to take it personal. I might say to them, hey, you know what? I'm not going to engage in this conversation. I care about you, but I'm taking the dog for a walk, right? That's me creating a boundary. I'm not telling you to change. I'm grabbing the dog. I'm going for a walk. I need some time by myself. So hopefully that's tied together. Tammy, you got something else there?
No, I wrote down the books, and I wrote them in the opposite order, because like you were telling them, and I wrote them down, and then I put an arrow going this one first per your son. I think like I hear this often. Oh, I've learned my lesson. I said it, I've learned my lesson. I won't do that again. And like, I know for sure, had I not gotten the help that I needed, I would not have had the capacity to not do that. So I was at my personal 12-step meeting last night, and I'm going to share this real quick, but we read something out of one of the pieces of literature, and when I was sharing, I said, I wish I had that tattooed on my hand, because like to have that reminder of like it was a really practical thing. And I was like, because this week, and I know part of it was low bandwidth because it was a very emotional, it was a really good weekend with the retreat that we were talking about at the beginning, but I also have not had time to do enough self-care I mean, like, I know I'm thank God it's Friday, honestly, but yeah, it's one of those things. And I was like, so there was a moment that had I taken a few minutes and thought things through and made a different choice, I had to unwrap some drama that was unnecessary. So when you're talking, I love that you're talking about if you can, listen through the whatever's out there and not take that on, as a personal affront, then then you're actually really communicating on a deeper, level. And I do think, boundaries, like, it is, Gavin Sharp, and I've said this before, Gavin Sharp did a great one on why addicts need boundaries. But part of it was everyone needs boundaries. And I was like, yes, we do. And, but, and as you're sharing it, it's unmet needs. It can even be, I'm setting this up because it is a need, and I want you to meet that, and I'm creating a pathway for how we do it,
Oh,
so
totally. Boundaries
um
are really a doorway. And that's why
yes,
I hate the word
yes,
boundaries.
yeah, I like that doorway. Yeah, but it's also one of those, I have the ability to open and close it based on, how safe, the environment is. The boundaries I need, so I just mentioned low bandwidth. Guess I have a couple calls that have come in. That's why I was muted. But after I take care of those calls, I'm turning the phone off for, like, I'm going to be done for the week, even though it's a little bit early, because I just know I need that. But that's the
Right.
boundary I've set for myself, and it's with intention, to have self-care. So I appreciate all of that. I will read those books in that order too. But okay, we've got questions. So the first one, hybrid trade partner here. D-Day was 11 of 20. I'm wondering about what your guys' thoughts are on the addict not feeling up, the addict not feeling up to doing a formal disclosure. Okay. Oh gosh, I just don't feel up for it. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to be sarcastic.
Yeah,
He's very
Terry.
slow person in multiple avenues of his life, school, habits, etc. So him not being able to push forward with formal disclosure is actually not a surprise. Do you think this is detrimental to healing? She did add, I should add that he swears by the fact that he's told me everything I know, take with a massive grain of salt, given the addict's tendency to lie and lie to himself as well as everyone else. I
Well,
can't tell you how often I hear, "Oh, you know everything." And
uh,
so
well,
anyway,
let's
so
let's slow down and break this apart a little bit.
yes, please.
I think I'll start with um I think I'm going to start with, is it detrimental to healing? Interestingly enough, I don't know. Um, you have to understand. Let me explain. I have to be careful how I say this because it could easily be taken poorly, taken wrong. Um, I don't know what I would ever say is detrimental to healing, because I think any of us can find healing if we're looking for healing. So it depends on what you're asking. Is it detrimental to healing? I've seen people not do a formal disclosure, and as a couple, they find healing and they're really connected and they've changed their lives. I've seen that. I've seen it where people can't get the healing until they get a formal disclosure. And so I've seen it both directions. Like, really, I hate to ask that, or I hate to say it, you've got to ask yourself that question. Is it detrimental to my healing? Can I accept? And you almost have to say, can I accept that, to maybe to the best of his ability, or to the best that he's able to be honest, he's as honest as he can be. And if this is what he's got, then this is what I have to live with. Um, it's interesting because you talk about him being a slow person. Um, I, you know, I, One, I would ask, is he working with, I mean, my hope is if you're doing a formal disclosure, he's working with a CSAT already on preparing that. I've had certain clients that take a very long time, and we are just chipping away at it over and over until we finally get it done. I think the research that I last saw was about 90%. Is it 90%, 92%,
It's
whatever?
over 90%.
It's over
Yeah.
90% of partners found the formal disclosure beneficial. And so less than 10% did not find it beneficial, or it was harming.
I
Um,
think it was, and I kind of think that was both people too. Like, I think that I
Oh,
think there was I'd have to go look at the study, but I kind of think it was both parties found it helpful for, creating that foundation to move forward. So
interesting.
so but I'm not 100% on that, but I kind of think it wasn't just the betrayed partner that found it beneficial. Both parties found it helpful for the process.
But what we do know is that for the majority of people, it's helpful. Is it required for healing? I don't know, necessarily know. Here's the hard part. When you talk about he swears he's told me everything, I want to speak quickly to when you do disclosure, sometimes hearing a formal disclosure, it's not that sometimes I've had partners say, I think I've heard everything, but hearing it in that order, hearing it all at once gave me an impact I wasn't expecting. And so that they'll tell me this was heavier or harder or more beneficial than I would have realized because of the way in which you've heard everything. You most likely have heard everything. Let me reframe that. If you've heard everything, you most likely have heard everything in some sort of staggered, out of chronological order disclosure. And or he might not be lying to you, but thinks that he's honestly told you everything. We just don't know. Here's the other funny part. How will knowing everything benefit you? Is it the fact that he just did it, that he did the disclosure that's going to be a benefit, the fact that he went through with it? Or I mean, because I've found a lot of partners when they're done with the formal disclosure are like, well, how do I know it's really everything? So I encourage them, well, let's do a polygraph. And have a formal polygraph done, or have a polygraph done within a few days or a week. But the funny part there is those aren't foolproof. Those aren't 100%. They've got a really good track record, and I really
Mm.
encourage them. Well, come on.
I
They're,
did the research. I don't want to get into it. Keep going. You're doing great. Just keep going. But
I
we'll
will
have a
tell you,
separate conversation about polygraphs because I did a lot of research.
well, okay, let's have a separate conversation. But what I should say is, if nothing else, it's a tool that often helps somebody surrender and just make sure everything is told. I've found it very beneficial, is what I should say. Whether it's incredibly accurate or not is another story. I still think it's a helpful tool. Okay, now I think that's everything on that one.
I'll agree. And to me, part of it is my only catch was he's not feeling up to it. Like I was like, well, is he feeling up to being in a really good relationship with you? I align with Matt. What do you need for you? And some partners go, I know enough. I know it was bad. I see that he's doing different. I see him making progress. I see him taking actions, and that's enough for us to build forward. So this really goes to what do you need?
Right.
From an addict standpoint, having accountability. I mentioned 12 steps, but doing a 4-step, doing a 5th step, doing a searching a fearless moral inventory of ourselves is how we clean up for ourselves and move forward. So
It,
there's this kind of paired thing.
it's tough because I try to, when I'm working directly with the betrayed partner, I will always tell them, like, your best tool is to ask yourself, what does your relationship look like right now? And do you see them making changes? Even if they're not at the level of change that you would want, do you see change? Is your relationship better? Is that person better than where they were? That's going to be your greatest tool for whether or not there's progress. Because I've seen people do a formal disclosure, pass a poly, not act out anymore, and they're not fun humans. And so really and I've seen people who slip on a regular basis with whatever addiction they're struggling with, and to be honest, they're a changed person. They're just still struggling with the compulsive side of things, right? You're really, the most important thing is, do you see change? And sometimes it's hard to see that change. You've got too much hurt and pain going on yourself. So that's why doing your own healing is so important.
Yeah, I really think, what do you need? And think about, what do you expect? Because it isn't, it isn't, oh, now I know everything. And, it's all, because there's actually provisions. If you're working with a qualified professional, they're going to have a provision as if something comes up afterwards that,
Mhm.
I mean, because this happens, it's so compartmentalized, so that there's a plan. So you don't necessarily know everything. You will have a foundation on which to build.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. And if you perceive that that will help you have it, like Matt said, because the data would be different, and it's data, you know. It's not like, oh, I'm so sorry, I was so, no, it's, I had unprotected sex the X amount of times, I spent this much money. I mean, it's like, it's more data. Now that can be helpful too, because you've heard it, perhaps heard it trickle, trickle, trickle. So now it's like pulled together, more cohesively. But I mentioned fourth and fifth step. This is not an addict sharing their fourth and fifth step. This is separate. This is, compiled and formatted so that it's less hurtful for betrayed partners. I'll add one more thing: the getting all the gory details. I get some partners that I need to know all of
Ye-
that, and
ye-
then I get the people that are so caught up in the trauma that, like, they're going, I need help. I'm stuck in the loop of the visualization. I've had multiple of those just this week, and so
Yeah.
so so getting the information in a way that is presented in a meaningful way, so that you have, that foundation of honesty, but you also aren't extra, it isn't dumping more trauma on you. I mean, that's the goal, is that, there's a foundation, on which to build for healing and moving forward. So, okay. And then somebody said, congrats to you about
Yeah.
your new adventure.
Thank you.
Um, okay. So looking back, I could see my husband slipping, and he says he didn't see it. What could I do to protect myself in the future? He wouldn't take any of my suggestions. He had a relapse. So what I hear, like, I just want to, so I could see my husband's, so I'm thinking that this person saw the trajectory that the husband was going to slip.
Yeah.
Is that what you're reading too? Okay.
Oh, totally. So here's the hard part, right? Like, um, and again, not to be rude, when I'm working with somebody who struggles with an addiction, their self-awareness is usually pretty dang low. And that's just because they've spent their life trying to find some way to cope. And so your self-awareness isn't very high if you're finding ways to numb out instead of, looking inward and finding healing. And so it really is very common for those around us, to be more aware of what we have going on. Um, I consider myself a very self-aware person, as funny as arrogant as that might sound. I remember I went through something really difficult a couple years ago, and my wife said to me, she said, I could put up with your anger for about a year. And after a year, I said, okay, I'm done with the anger. You need to work on that. And I was like, I didn't know that it was presenting that way,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, I've been working through this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling better. She wasn't seeing it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, to be honest, I think the loved ones in our lives are hidden regulators. And so if you are struggling with a compulsivity or an addiction, or if you're a betrayed partner, like, you want to start listening to those people around you who are saying, hey, I'm a little nervous. Really? Why? What am I not seeing that you are possibly seeing? Right? And um, now keep in mind, one of the four qualities, or one of the four faulty core beliefs of an addict is, um, I can't rely on others to be there for me. And so somebody telling me, hey, I'm worried you're not in a good place, it's like, how dare you? Who are you to tell me? I can't rely on you to be there for me. You're just criticizing me. And so those of you who are struggling with addiction, I want you to pay attention to how often your loved ones are just saying, hey, I care about you and I'm worried about you. They're not criticizing you at all. They're just telling you that they're nervous. They see something that maybe you don't. And so that is super common. It's probably going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say, what can I do to protect myself in the future? there's a part of me that wants to push back a little on you. Protect yourself from what? Protect yourself from a spouse who struggles with an addiction and makes unhealthy choices that hurt you? I mean, the truth is, I think all of us have to be working on our self-care so that when he or she slips up in the future, that we're protecting ourselves by realizing this isn't about me. Like, I feel sad for him or her, but the truth is, I'm going to try to warn them and let them know that I care and let them know that I'm worried. But at the same time, protecting yourself is you just doing your self-care and getting your support system in place and taking care of yourself in a healthy way. And so I do have some curiosity there. Like, teach me more about what you mean. Put it in the Q&A further down and we'll get back to it. What do you mean by protect yourself? Because when we're in relationships, especially when we're in a vulnerable relationship, all relationships are vulnerable. But when we're especially vulnerable as a betrayed partner in a relationship with a betrayer, protecting yourself is really hard, because how do you have a vulnerable relationship and every day you wake up that this person is, the word I want to use is struggling, unstable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And there, I mean, to be honest, you're in a relationship where protecting yourself, I mean, do what you can, obviously, but teach me more about exactly what you are asking, because it's hard. Anytime the fact that you're a betrayed partner in a relationship that you're in, kudos to you for being awesome and trying to figure out what's best for you and your spouse. But at the same time, there's pain there. So Tammy, am I missing something on
Well,
that?
no, I don't think at all. And it is painful and it is hurtful. And to watch someone you care about and you see the train coming and they're like,
Oh
nope,
yeah.
nope, it's just a headlight. It's
And
like, it's the light at the end of the tunnel. And,
and when
so
the train comes and hits them, it hurts you as well.
yes.
And
Yeah.
so that's the sad part. Sometimes we have to become well acquainted and comfortable that pain is going to happen. That
Yeah.
this is part of in this case, your partner's healing, is that they're probably going to screw up like this.
Well, and so the aftermath is, so now there's been a relapse, hopefully has gotten,
Yeah.
back in,
And
back
it makes me
on.
want to know, is it a slip or a relapse? I
Well,
do
this
think
says relapse.
yeah, it
So
says a
there were
relapse.
slips and now it says relapse. So to
Yeah.
me, it has digressed, and that was probably an
Yep.
eventuality with that as well. So, but is there an opportunity for communication about it without judgment? Yes, there's hurt, but is there an opportunity to say, when I am concerned, when I am seeing things, are you open to hearing, me, ask you about it? Do you guys do a check-in? There's a number, including like Fanos. It's just one, but there's other check-ins where you can kind of get a gauge of, where each other are. It isn't even just about him checking in, it's you guys to check in.
Yeah.
The healthy boundaries for you, I mean, it is, what do you need? And when you see someone doing that, what do you need to do to take care of yourself? And like Matt said, good self-care. What is that? It's
Yeah,
connecting with other betrayed partners,
and,
doing, go ahead.
and keep in mind, when I talk about, man, you're in a relationship with somebody who's struggling, like it's hard to protect yourself. Keep in mind, I am in no way suggesting you deserve this, right?
No.
Like, you don't deserve this at all. And my hope and prayer is that he, in this case, he is able to continue working on it and figure it out. Like, you don't deserve to be hurt. Unfortunately, that's just, I mean, that's part of the bravery, I guess, of you staying in the marriage and trying to be a support. But it's super painful.
And I talk to addicts often about the relapse or the slip didn't happen in that moment. It was when you gave yourself permission yesterday because your boss made a comment that you took personally, or whatever.
It's when
Like,
you
it never
stopped.
happens in that moment.
It's when you stopped your routines. It's when you stopped your healthy rituals.
Hmm.
And you didn't do your spiritual dailies today because you felt fine, or you didn't do your exercise, your physical exercise today because you thought, oh, I'm doing good, I don't need to do it, I'll be fine. And it's it's a daily activity of keeping up on meeting your needs in healthy ways. It's just,
Mhm.
if you don't, you slip. So
Mhm. Yes, yes. You mentioned earlier the I'll never, and I've been doing this a few 24 hours, and I still don't say I'll never, do whatever. I do what I need to do today to protect myself from that.
I'm
So
sorry I laughed when you said a few 24 hours. Yeah, a few.
yeah, it's been a few 24. Okay. So with disclosure of acting out history now a part of reality in our marriage, can you suggest an effective marriage therapy specialty or therapist credentials you would recommend to work with to better communicate and both parties feel heard? There's just too many options. How do you choose?
That's so I love the question for several reasons. And I'm going to tell you a fun story. I have a clinician here in my office, and he's an excellent therapist. But he dives into research like nobody else I know. And he actually had sent me some information that when you talk about success in therapy, 40% of the success that someone has in therapy is their outside support system, 12 step, their friend groups, their church community, wherever it is that they get support, their family, right? If somebody has a low support system, they have that much less, 40%, if you will, less chance of being successful in therapy. And so, that's huge. 30% is how connected they feel to their therapist, right? So how much they like their therapist, how much they feel like their therapist cares about them and is challenging them and that sort of thing. So there's 70% of your success in therapy right there. Another 15% of success in therapy is hope. How much hope do they have? And part of that is how much hope can the therapist help instill, but 15% is hope. The last 15% is actually the therapist's modality. And my favorite part about this is that this therapist in my office, who I love, he's like, hey, so all you therapists out there that think your modality is the poop, is really, it doesn't mean poop hardly. So I kind of laugh because when people ask me what modality, what credentials do I recommend, I love the question because it's a question I've asked in so many ways, right? Um, but the reality of it is, almost more important is find a therapist that you both like find a therapist who the way that they interact with you works for the two of you. Now, me personally, as far as couples counseling, I've been trained in emotionally focused couples therapy. I love the modality. And it's been fantastic for me. It's been fantastic from what I can tell for a lot of clients that I work with, but I'm also not trained in Gottman. Gottman does wonderful work. And the other therapist in my office is trained in the one I was telling you about, who I was just speaking of. He's trained in Gottman. And the truth is, honestly, do you guys like your therapist? Do you gel with them? And then try them out and see what works. But the thing that I would recommend for marriage therapy is find a marriage counselor who has a specialty in marriage counseling, because the last research I saw was over 90% of all therapists have no training in couples therapy outside of their graduate school training. And let me tell you, graduate school training for marriage counseling is usually pretty low. There some exceptions might be an MFT, a marriage and family therapist, but even still, most therapists have found that once you graduate with your master's, it's all the other training you get that helps you become a specialist in what you do. And so I would look for somebody who's trained in EFT or trained in Gottman. I would look for somebody who has some type of training in marriage counseling or relationship counseling specifically. That I think is probably the most important. Me personally, I love EFT. I think it's fantastic. But Gottman has a lot of great stuff as well. And there's others. So let's see here. Did that answer everything? There are too many options. It probably does feel like too many options. Hopefully that explains. The other thing I do is ask your friends, ask people in your 12-step group, ask people in your recovery circles, which therapists.
Ask your personal therapist who they recommend.
Well,
That's where I
that
go,
too.
is like, honestly, who does your like because working with just a marriage therapist, it doesn't, like you said with the marriage therapy, most of them, most therapy or most therapists don't have or have a minimal amount of addiction training.
Oh,
So
it's true.
so again, now you happen, like, your lens is, I've been working at this amazing place for 11 years, so I have this entire team that this is all we do. In
Uh-huh.
the real world, sorry, but in the real world,
Right.
many people aren't trained in any of this, and so it's a hot mess, to put it
Well,
mildly.
oh, it is. It kind of is. And I'll be honest, like I knew coming into doing therapy that I was going to become a sex addiction therapist. Like I knew it. And so that's really what my focus was. So I became a certified sex addiction therapist. And then I realized, I didn't know this, but then I realized, you know what? I need training to help couples specifically in this situation. So it's funny, people call me all the time, and if they aren't asking me for sex addiction work, couples counseling, I'll send them to another therapist because I'm not a general practitioner. Like, I don't want somebody typically who's like, hey, I need some anxiety work. You know, if somebody comes to me with trauma work, that's another thing that I will like, yeah, I'll take you on because trauma is part of my specialty. But like a good therapist isn't just taking everybody, right? A good
Thank
therapist,
you.
in my opinion, is really honing in on their specialty, right? I don't want to go see a doctor who, oh, I can work with you on your broken ankles. I'm what I really deal with is cancer. I'm like, no, I just want somebody who specializes in what I need, right? And so that's
Yes.
really what Tammy's saying. And the problem is too many therapists. I mean, you can tell people you specialize in whatever you want. I mean, in a sense, you can't tell people I'm certified in something. I mean, you can get in trouble, but and so you've got to be careful as a therapist. But yeah, I would vet your therapist. Sometimes you're in a small town and it's like, see somebody. It's better than nothing. Um,
Or
other times,
email me, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. But you know, we always say work with your personal therapist,
yeah,
each of
ask
you,
your
and
personal therapist
then
for referrals.
yes, and then
Sometimes
yeah.
you could ask your therapist, hey, if you could see any couples therapist in this town, who would you see for your marriage?
Mhm,
You know,
mhm. Or
that's
sometimes your individual therapist will do conjoint couples therapy. I mean,
yeah,
like that happens regularly too. And then
totally,
you each have your person, and they're like, so there's lots of different ways to do that. But I'm going
absolutely.
back to do your, okay. Next question
Next question.
is, betrayed partner here, a few weeks out of discovery. How can I support my PA husband who is experiencing intermittent episodes of intense shame? I unfortunately find myself very triggered by it because the self-focus of his shame feels like selfishness that got us here in the first place. We will start therapy soon. Should I avoid addressing it without the help of a therapist? Thanks.
So here's the hard part about shame. Um, what we know is that shame drives addiction. Shame fuels it. And so the hard part is, and this is what I hate about doing this work, is that it feels so unfair to a betrayed partner because before the addict in this sense can ever show up for a betrayed partner, they often have to do so much of their own shame work but to even stay present. Um, and so I guess it's hard because I think it's important for you to be aware that it's there. What can you do to help? What we know about shame is increased with secrets. Shame is increased with silence. Shame is increased with judgment. So do your best to not have secrets, which I chuckle because I'm talking to a betrayed partner who's likely feeling so much pain because of all the secrecy. And so I realize how difficult that is. We want to talk about things. Now, here's the hard part. You're like, I try to talk. He goes into intense shame, right? I get it. I realize how insane it must sound that I'm telling you this. And then lastly, do your darndest to stay out of judgment, right? Now, that's possibly the thing you have most control of. But the problem is that if he is interpreting your judgment, even if you are staying out of judgment, that's really difficult to navigate. So if you look at the opposite of secrecy is transparency. The opposite of silence is vulnerability. I'm sorry. The opposite of secrecy is transparency. The opposite of silence is vulnerability. It's let's be vulnerable about things. And then the opposite of judgment is one of two things. It's either self-compassion, compassion for myself, or it's empathy. So the best thing I can do for somebody else that's having shame is empathize with that shame. I've felt that shame. I have felt shame too. I've been there as well. I'm sorry you're feeling that way, right? Like I can see how much pain this brings you. So it sucks because as a betrayed partner, you are learning all of these empathy skills, or you're using empathy skills that you've already had, and you're nurturing the person who injured you. It feels insane. And I want you, those of you who are struggling with compulsivity or addiction, I want you to realize how difficult this is for a betrayed partner, because they're bleeding. You inadvertently have, and I'm going to use a gracious assumption there, stabbed them over and over with these betrayal experiences of acting out or whatever. And you are so filled with shame that they are now having to tend to you while they're bleeding out, if that makes sense. And you're bleeding out. You've been bleeding out your whole life, using addiction to stitch up these wounds. And so you're not doing well either, right? But this is how difficult it is for a betrayed partner in these moments of, I want you to show up for me. I want you to care for me. I want you to nurture and stitch up my wounds. But you keep going into shame so deeply. And I have people who are like, well, I go into shame about going into shame, you know? And it's like, unfortunately, that is the insidious nature of shame and why it's so important for us to start working on it, to heal it. But other people can't heal our shame. We have to heal our shame. Other people can help. And so should you be addressing it without the help of a therapist? I mean, in some sense, I don't think you have a choice, right? You can't always be there. But at the same time, I think sometimes you may have to say, you know what, I'm going to hold on to this one until our next session. And I'm going to see if I can address this or show up for them in their shame and maybe get guidance. How do I show up in their shame when I'm in so much pain myself? It's terribly difficult. Anyway, I feel
I
like
think the transparency, like I think it's okay for partners to go, I know that I can see the shame that you are feeling, but I'm in pain, and there are support resources. You're here. Thank you. There are a ton of support resources that he can go use. Like, I mean, even if it's listening to a podcast, like there are things, the drop-in groups, there's so many resources. Him getting peer contacts. I know lots of people that are through our drop-in groups or 12-step, they're connecting with other peers going like, oh, I'm, like I need to take a break right now because I need to go contact my peer support so that I can show up differently. But for you, it's like, it's okay to go, I can't be there for you now, and I love what Matt said about let's hold this one's a biggie. Let's hold that off. But at some point it's like, that is for you. I'm going to go take care of me, and just giving yourself the space to Because the other thing about shame that addicts can do is it can keep pushing you away. Oh, I don't dare show up. I don't dare show my pain because he's going to react negatively and then he's going to slip or relapse. Not your fault, not your responsibility, so how do you take care of you, honoring the space for his healing? It's really it feels like a juggling thing where you're juggling lots of balls at the same time, and going, how do but how do you take care of you? Is like, what boundaries do you need about things? It's tough, but I'm so glad you're here, and please do lean into the resources, and the support that is for betrayed partners. It's up to him to get the help that he and support that he needs too. So, okay, next question is, we have been on this journey since 1999 with many relapses, 6 after CSAT counseling groups, EMDR, EFT, and inner child. He talks to me with a tone and irritation that gaslights me, and then relapse happens.
So this is
That's
a
a person that comes to our treatment program. So.
Yeah, that was on the one earlier that was saying she can tell.
Oh, that
Yeah,
it's coming. Oh, I
yeah,
see. Okay,
yeah.
yeah. But
All she was doing there was
yeah.
following up on
Oh,
information. And
thank
so,
you.
yeah,
But
I mean, to be honest, you're probably an expert at seeing him. And so, as a reminder, if he's listening, which I hope he is, that you want to take into consideration, if your betrayed partner is giving you insight into possible like concern, man, pay attention. Like, be like, wow, thank you for being worried about me. Thank you for caring about me. Let me check in with my sponsor. Let me check in with my therapist, and because maybe I'm not seeing something,
so this is a thread, and I promise we'll hang tight and get to the other one too. But do you think EFT works with someone who's acting out, couples EFT?
That is actually such a good question.
Yeah.
The reality of it is, how do I say this? It depends on the acting out. Okay. So if they're being honest about their acting out, I think it can still be effective. The problem you run into anytime somebody is active in an addiction, even if they're being honest about it, they're fracturing their attachment, and they're reaching to their addiction as a way of getting comfort instead of reaching to their partner as a way of getting comfort, and instead of reaching to their friends as a way of getting comfort. And so it is less effective. Absolutely. Right. If somebody's lying about it and they're acting out in their addiction, but they're doing EFT, I've done plenty of couples therapy, finding out later that somebody's not telling the truth, that they're acting out in an addictive way. And I beat my head against the wall as a therapist, wondering, why in the world is this not working? And so the truth is, if somebody's acting out and not being honest, no, it doesn't work. Like, no therapy works, at least very well,
Right.
if somebody's not being honest, right? So, and because at the heart of EFT is attachment. And so if I'm being honest that I'm struggling with fracturing my attachment and using an addiction or whatever, then I'm being vulnerable with you about my struggle, and attachment can still occur. But obviously the best attachment work is going to be done when I'm not fracturing it with an addiction. Did that answer the question, Tammy?
Yes, but she adds, I assume it's she, adds, my husband has a history of going to counseling and groups and acting out at the same time. That is what I mean by protecting myself. His relapses are very painful. And then is added, I hear you saying, I just have to accept my husband is always going to betray me.
Oh, I love that you told me that. Because that is certainly not the message that I'm trying to send. And I can totally see why you heard me say that. And so I just want to validate you that that would be very painful for me to hear, for me to hear if I was being told that. And so let me try and maybe reframe it just a little. I think if you are choosing to stay in the relationship and he's not getting healthier, you have to figure out, what does protecting yourself look like? Do you find yourself setting up and again, I'm going to say this, like, let's say the betrayal continuing to happen is just too difficult and I need my space. So I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to go live in another room. And we're going to live separately in the home while I can just have my own place to ground and not feel triggered. And so that might be me protecting myself. And I might say, you know what? I need to feel like that is, I'm going to need to stay here probably for several months, and let's revisit it in a couple of months, or let's revisit in 90 days or something. I'm just making this up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a way that you protect yourself. The problem is I can't tell you what you need to protect yourself, right? If you're saying, am I always going to be in a relationship where he betrays me? Well, the truth is that's up to him. In some sense, it's up to him. Is he going to figure out how to get healthy? And is it worth it for you to stay in the relationship while he figures that out? I think every one of us has to figure that out in our own relationships. Is the trouble of this relationship worth staying in this relationship? And so in that sense, if you choose to stay in it and he chooses to stay unhealthy, then you might need to accept that he's always going to betray you. And I've seen people make that decision, and they make that decision from a place of peace, and they're okay with it. Not that they're okay because it's okay. It's messed up. It's not okay, right? But at the same time, I can appreciate why somebody would stay in that marriage for the rest of their life, because they love them, because of the family situation, because of whatever reasons they choose to stay in it. I don't think it's okay that you might have to accept that he's going to betray you, but it's up to you to decide whether you accept that or whether he accepts that. I think it's sad, and I hope he gets the healing he needs. But man, if he's been doing this since 1999, and you guys are at this point almost 25 years in, then there's a part of me that says that yeah, you guys are in a rough place. So I don't know if that made sense, Tammy.
It does. And so this makes me incredibly sad.
It is sad.
I hurt for you, the betrayed partner. I hurt for him, because if he understood how amazing real recovery is, he jumped through the hoops. Like, if you understood how good it is, any addict would set aside the fear of, of having to change, and would be going like, yeah, bring it on. So really sad from that standpoint. So, okay, we've got one more, and we're going to get through this. So the betrayer here, 14 months in since D-Day, working with a CSAT, working on disclosure. My CSAT is still in the trauma phase, and I'm almost done. Granted, her is writing the document because I work it as a dump statement. So a CSAT is rewriting it because
I'm curious on the CSAT rewriting it. Every CSAT, I think, probably does things a little differently. What I usually do is I'll make you rewrite it, if that makes sense. Is that you and I will go through it, and I'll say, you might want to change this, you might want to change this, you might want to change this, or I'll encourage you to change this. And so I'm not sure I understand the CSAT's in the trauma phase, because
I don't know what that is either.
I'm not sure what that means. Because let me just explain the way I understand it. I won't address the trauma of the person struggling with an addiction until I get them stabilized. Because if I start bringing up their trauma, I'm going to destabilize them. So I'm not sure what that means, that they're in the trauma phase. And so I don't know that I can comment too much on that. So, but you have a right to advocate for yourself. If something's not working, tell your CSAT therapist and ask them, help me understand why we're doing this now, or help me understand why we're still doing this. This doesn't feel as effective to me. And so absolutely advocate for yourself. You always have a right to advocate for yourself. I want every single client of mine to advocate for themselves. If I'm not showing up for them the way they need, you better believe I want them to tell me. Don't waste my time by not telling me. Fight for yourself. And so if it doesn't feel right, or you're feel like you're stuck in one phase that just, you've done what you need to do and you're ready to move on, fight for yourself. Absolutely. But I think that's about as much insight as I can get based
Yeah.
on the information that I have.
I have never heard of a therapist rewriting a disclosure, like it's guiding, but
Yeah.
not like physically rewriting. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
never
And
heard of that. So
it
like
doesn't mean that there may not be a proper use for
I
that.
I
It
don't
just,
know. It's
it
just
just, it
uh,
catches me off guard. I just
right.
was like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
well, yeah.
So we got it done. Thank you all for being here. Thanks, Matt. It was great to see you again. Good luck on the next adventure, the next chapter.
The
So I'm excited
transition.
for you. Yeah, it's a good thing. So I still love family strategies, but
Oh, family
obviously,
strategies is
yeah,
great.
yeah. So it's one of those where, but I will look forward to referring directly to you as well. So thanks, everyone. Debbie will be back next week. Bye.
Bye.